I'm your host, Bill Muckler, and I'm coming to you from my home studio in Cocoa, Florida. And today I'm really excited to have a very special guest, and that's Valerie Berube. And I want to tell you a little bit about Valerie. She's a retired United States Marine Corps Lieutenant Colonel with 30 years of active duty and reserve service. She served in Kosovo, Iraq, and Afghanistan, and she's led thousands of people around the world to great accomplishments. She holds a master's degree in leadership from the University of Oklahoma and is a certified project and program management professional with the Project Management Institute. Currently is a director of private public partnerships at Luke Air Force Base. That's in Arizona, and that's where Valerie's coming to us from. And she's the president of Teeming with Talent, LLC, a leading training company. And she also is the author of a book called Polish Your Star. So Valerie, welcome to the American Vision. I'm so excited to have you on the show. And I would like for you to tell us a little bit about your career in the Marine Corps, because in the Marine Corps is, well, let me put it this way. There's one organization that's been in the United States of America for more than 243 years, and they are the most successful organization in the United States of America, and that's the United States Marine Corps, and the Marine Corps is really the leader in leadership. So tell us a little bit about your Marine Corps career and how you got started and all this, and then we can talk a little bit more about your book.
Well, it started in 1986 on Christmas Eve at 4 a.m. I was literally on a street corner without my parents' permission or knowledge, because I at that time in my life I was little more than a hot mess, and I was kind of on my own and sometimes in trouble, sometimes not, but I was really impressed by a Marine Corps recruiter who had spent some time with me talking to me about the Marine Corps as an option for my future. And I made the decision that I wanted to do it, but I was too young at the time. I was 17. And I turned 18 on December 10th, so I no longer needed my parents' permission because they were dead set against it. They were not having it. But at the same time, they let me have a lot of, freedom, so to speak. I was kind of out and about, maybe a little too much sometimes. And so I met my recruiter on a street corner at 4 a.m. It was dark, and he picked me up, took me to San Diego. I went through the entire process. I swore in that day. I returned home late that evening, about 6 p.m., just completely hungry because I hadn't eaten all day, with a yellow piece of paper. I walked in the house, and my mom was, "Oh, honey, what did you do all day? Where have you been?" Because she probably thought I was Christmas shopping. And I explained to her, I showed her the paper. I said, "I enlisted in the Marine Corps today." And at that point, there was a lot of yelling. There was a lot of chaos, which prepared me for boot camp, I suppose. There was just a lot of yelling, and you have to undo that right now. And you tell that recruiter to, you made a mistake and all. I said, "No, I did not make a mistake. This is what I'm doing." And so there was a little bit of drama to start with. Then when I graduated high school in June, less than a couple weeks later, I was on the Yellow Footprints in Parris Island. And that adventure began, and I really enjoyed boot camp, actually, if anyone can say that. And by the end of boot camp, we were all standing in formation, and the sergeant major came in front of every recruit and asked what they thought of boot camp. And my answer was that I didn't think it was hard enough. And he gave me he cocked his head to the side, a surprised look, and he said, "Well, what do you mean by that?" And I said, "Well, we didn't learn enough about being a warrior and fighting and, the combat stuff and so forth. I mean, we did a little bit of that, but I saw the guys doing a whole lot more. How come you don't do as much with us?" And he had no answer. And this was 1987, remind you, you know, so we didn't do nearly as much as the women do today. The hikes were much less. We spent much less time in the field. They gave us makeup classes. I mean, it was very strict, and it was all about making your rack and marching a certain way and having a super crisp uniform. And they spent most of their time on that, and not enough time on teaching us, you know, fighting and things like that. So, and that's what I was expecting. I'm an athletic, energetic woman, and that's
a warrior.
I had long hair, and you know, but I didn't care. That was the experience I wanted, and so it surprised him. So I went on with my enlisted career. I was in the reserves at the time, so I went to college at the same time I was at my reserve unit. And I really enjoyed my reserve unit. I was the only female there. And I remember they had openings for going to jump school. And they didn't allow women to go to jump school at that time, but they had some openings, and I didn't know this at the time. So I went through the process, and I went through the physical fitness, and, you know, passed everything, and I filled out my form and application, and there was about 10 of us applying for 4 openings, and we stood outside the first sergeant's office, and he was calling us in one by one to interview us. And he's an old Vietnam vet. I think it was like 1989 at the time. He's an old Vietnam vet. He smoked, and he had that coffee cup with the brown ring in it, and he didn't mince his words. He was a very, very direct man. And but he always treated me like a Marine. I mean, he never treated me any differently than any of the other Marines there. Even though I was a woman, he always treated me the same way. And I loved it. And I walked in, and he looked at the form. Now, remind you, the form didn't say whether you were male or female, because back then only males could apply. So, you know, it didn't show up there. And he was looking at the form, and he was asking me questions, didn't even look up at me. And then he finally looked up at me, and he pounded his fist on the desk and said, "Oh, shit, you are a female, get out of here." And I said, oh, I was just shocked, you know, oh, okay. You know, I left, and some women would think, oh, that's a, you know, terrible way to treat someone, but that was just how he was. I mean, he was direct. He probably didn't know how to react. He was shocked himself, clearly. And some people would say, oh, you know, you didn't get that opportunity, but, you know, I saw it as one of the ways that the Marine Corps saw me so much as part of them that even despite the rules, he thought, he didn't even realize it until the last minute, because he always thought of me as a Marine like everybody else. And I'll treasure that. I'll actually treasure that. So anyway, moving on, I graduated with my degree and spent a couple of years kind of like wondering what to do with myself. And I remember being at a meeting, because I just loved my unit. I loved the Marines. I just loved them. I spent as much time as I could with them. And they were encouraging me to be an officer. And then I sat at a meeting one day, and it just kind of hit me one day. I guess sometimes you just get these, you know, flashes of the obvious. And I saw what the officers did, and I thought, I could do that. That's not good. They just sit around telling people what to do. I think maybe I could do, you know, learn how to do that. And so, so I went ahead and signed up for OCS, and I went to Quantico, and I went to OCS, went through the whole 10-week program, and that was exactly what I was looking for in boot camp. I mean, don't get me wrong, it was hard. It was very grueling, and it was hard, and I loved it.
I know how hard it is.
I just loved it. You know, I think the most difficult thing for me was the sleep deprivation, because I never do very well with sleep deprivation. That's always been the most difficult for me, and I don't run very fast, but I do try very, very hard, and I usually hold my own pretty well enough. So I got through OCS, and then my NTBS, and then my first platoon was 60 people in a motor transport platoon, and because I was a motor transport officer at the time, and there was a lack of leadership for some time, and so a lot of these young men and women were kind of, you know, lost, and they, you know, kind of getting into trouble. There was a lot of people, you know, getting into the wrong things, and I had a staff sergeant who was just a great guy, and I think he did more to teach me how to be an officer than anybody else, because at the time I went to OCS, but it's kind of like I still had that enlisted mentality in me. I was still being, you know, maybe over supervising because as a corporal and sergeant, yeah, you need to supervise, but as a lieutenant, you're supposed to back off a little bit more and let them run the show. And I didn't quite know how to do that. And so he helped me to navigate that. And his answer to whipping the Marines in shape, so to speak, was to train them hard. So he took them out into the field, and he had them doing, you know, exercises out in the field, and doing exercises with and he had got friends in the infantry battalions, and so we would go out with them and support them on some of their exercises and so forth, and they loved it. The Marines loved it. That's what they craved. You know, they didn't want to be idle and, you know, without direction. They love being given challenging things to do, and he did that. And that's one of the lessons I learned from him. Years later, it's funny because I was talking to an Air Force officer just a few months ago, and she was saying, well, I don't know why so many of our airmen are just leaving. They're just leaving the Air Force, even though we're giving them all these creature comforts and giving them all these opportunities and doing all these things for them. I said, well, I can tell you what the problem is. I said, stop pampering them. And she said, oh, I expect a Marine to say that. And I said, it's not about, you know, a Marine Air Force thing. It's about these young people want to be challenged, and you're not challenging them. You're just giving them and giving them and giving them stuff, but you're not challenging them in ways that are relevant, in ways that, you know, make them feel like, you know, they've accomplished something. So, you know, add a little less pampering, a little bit more challenge to the mix, relevant challenge, not just, you know, running around painting rocks. You know, I think you'll have a different outcome.
That makes an awful lot of sense, and I know when I can relate to you talking about OCS, because a lot of people, especially Marines, think that, oh, you become a second lieutenant just by showing up, and they pin some bars on you, and that's not exactly the way it was. But I really liked OCS, which is a boot camp for officers, and I think I was able to get through it because I realized that they really wanted me to become an excellent and outstanding Marine Corps officer. And so if you keep that in mind, you know, all the things you have to do and all the drills and the sleep deprivation, everything you have to do, you kind of put that aside and say, well, it's not personal. What they're trying to do is they're trying to teach me how to become a Marine Corps officer and a leader of men. And so when I got, for example, to Hawaii, I was only there for a few months. I was made a senior air director for my air control squadron, and so I had one of three shifts. We operated around the clock, and I had a crew of men. And so what I did is I talked to the gunny before every shift that we went on. I'd say, okay, here's what we need to do. Here's what's happening, and what do you need? And the gunny took care of everything. And so all I had to do was worry about the controllers and you know, my officers and my lieutenants who were underneath me. And so that's really how you learn how to delegate, and that's so important as an aspect of leadership.
Yes.
So.
Yes.
You ended up you got a master's degree in leadership from University of Oklahoma. How did that happen?
Well, I was in Afghanistan for a couple of years, and I had just finished the Command and Staff College. I was a major at the time. I had finished Command and Staff College, and I saw an opportunity to from Oklahoma University to take these online courses, and they gave me credit for my military experience and for Command and Staff College, and no other university was doing that, not to the level that Oklahoma University was doing. So I'm very grateful to them. And then I was able to use my GI Bill to help pay for that. And so I, when I had some time, I worked on my degree while I was there. And then when I returned from Afghanistan, I had even more time to work on my degree, and I finished it. And it was very eye-opening because it gave me an opportunity to, okay, so when you're in the Marine Corps, you get the Marine Corps version of leadership and how they interpret it. And then taking this master's degree with OU helped me to see like another side, like the science of leadership and emotional intelligence and personality traits. And it just kind of put everything that the Marine Corps did, that they didn't really explain the science behind it, they just kind of did it. It put a lot of that into perspective. Yes,
exactly. And so you ended up in the Marine Corps, retiring after 30 years and as a lieutenant colonel. And then tell us how you got started, and I'm interested to know about Polish Your Star, the book, because that's all part of the leadership training. And I've been reading your book on Kindle. Would like to know a little bit more about how you got it, how you got that started. And you also told me earlier that you had to kind of demilitarize the book a little bit in the editing.
Yeah, I had to demilitarize it. So I got the idea because when I retired and left the Marine Corps and got like this full immersion and start in the civilian world and in the private sector, it occurred to me that I didn't, when I landed on the footprints in Parris Island in 1986 as a teenager, 18 years old, immediately they started teaching you leadership. And they never took their foot off the gas pedal. I mean, they continued. You go to the corporal's course, you go to the sergeant's academy, you go to staff and CO, you keep on going. And same for the officers. Well, they don't do that in the private sector. They don't do that for our young people. A lot of companies don't do that. A lot of organizations, they just don't do that. So I thought, well, they're not being given many of the tools to help them be successful. So I put some thought into this. Well, what can I do to help them? I mean, you can't send them all to boot camp, obviously, but can we give them something in their short attention span moments where they can take maybe just 2 pages of reading or 3-minute lessons, a step-by-step process, and help them grow as a young budding leader. So I put this book together, and it starts off with them creating a vision for themselves, resetting. I call it the brain reset series. And so, you go to boot camp and you think you can't do something, but then they put you through a process, and by the end of that process, you feel like you can conquer the world. I mean, you just feel like, yes, I can. Well, this first set, I can't take them through boot camp, but what I can do is take them from a mindset of I can't do that, help them create a vision for themselves, and then put together something similar to a vision board, but it focuses more on habits rather than dreams. The habits that they need to have in order to improve in their lives. And then I have 6 more processes that I put them through with 3-minute daily lessons to help them grow as a person.
I really love this 3-minute daily lessons because it's something that a person can do every day, or maybe you can't do 5 of them every week or something like that, but you can continue on, and it's not like it's so time consuming, but it's very compact and concise.
Yeah, so had to keep in mind the fact that many of our young people, you know, and I hate to say that, you know, oh, they don't have an attention span. It's not so much that they don't have the attention span. They don't have the time. I mean, there's just so much being placed upon them. They have so many requirements on them to answer so many, you know, emails and watch these videos, and I have to respond to this, and oh, my mother's calling. When, you know, when I was a young person like that, we didn't even have cell phones. We didn't have computers like this. So I wasn't being bombarded with information, being bombarded with requests for responses and things like that. I just didn't have that. These young people are being so bombarded that, and so much is being demanded of them that I had to make it friendly for the environment that they're in now. So that was my focus, was putting together, I curated information. It didn't all just come from me. I curated information from the best minds on leadership and on psychology and on emotional intelligence and on personalities and on neuroscience and the brain programming and things like that. I curated this information and put it together in such a way that it made sense and it brought people along so that they can better understand themselves. Because self-awareness and self-understanding is you got to be right within before you think you can lead others. And so I start with that journey first, getting them right within, and then budding them out to being able to lead others.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. So your book is really a guide for leadership, but you also do leadership consulting. So tell us a little bit about that. If a company wanted to have you help them with their leadership skills?
Yes, so there's a couple of things that I like to do. First of all is they can use a book like this, which, you know, in the Marine Corps we call them hip pocket classes, when you had short little classes that you would give. Well, they can use this book to give to their junior leaders, to give those hip pocket classes and immediately start creating a culture of mentoring and leadership. So immediately they can, the book is meant to be a tool to help companies get that quick start, to start that culture of mentoring and leadership. And it should be, you know, all the way down where the senior leaders are also using this book and getting their take on it and their opinions and telling their stories and doing that with their middle managers, and then the middle managers doing that with their junior leaders, and then the junior leaders doing it with the people they lead. So it's a tool to help get that started. The second thing that I like to do, and I learned this in Command and Staff College, and I have found this to be the most useful thing as a commander, and that is having what they call a philosophy of command. And that's like a 10-point, it lists the expectations and boundaries that you expect from everybody. So if everyone was, you know, away from you and you were not available, well, if they followed those 10 rules, the expectations and boundaries, then everything would run pretty smoothly without you. And that was critical for me in Afghanistan when I was the officer in charge for the robotics for all coalition forces, all of the joint forces, 11 different platforms, constantly having to upgrade them, change them out. There was over 2,000 robots in the country, and you had to know where every one of them were, and they cost $150,000 a piece. And so there was a lot of moving parts. And so when you have people of, they're contractors, their Army, their Navy, their civilians, and they work for you and they're spread throughout the country, you need to have some clear boundaries and clear guidelines. And the one big boundary that I put up at the top, because this was a culture that I needed a change, and that was, there was a tendency to push back if a warfighter came in with a battle damaged robot and they needed to be repaired and it was 2 o'clock in the morning. I expect people to get up and fix that thing. But some of them didn't have that philosophy. And so, among other things, there was a little bit too much pushback going on. And so the number one rule I put at the top is that no one says no to the warfighter except me. So if they got an unsupportable request, okay, you got an unsupportable request from an Italian colonel who, you know, clearly we can't do whatever it is he's asking us to do. Send that to me and I will be the one to tell him no and explain why. But no one under me was allowed to say no to the warfighter. And so that quickly solved that problem, for example. So you have 10 boundaries and expectations like that, and you bring them out to your people. And I share that story with leaders of companies and universities and nonprofit organizations and explain that that's how they bring the heroes out in their people. Number one, they teach leadership from the bottom up. And number two, they have clear expectations and boundaries and a philosophy of leadership that they put out. And they don't just put these out. They have to live it. They have to embody it. They have to show it in the way they carry themselves and the way they communicate every day.
That makes a lot of sense. And really, in leadership, when I first became a Marine Corps officer, was you could delegate authority, but you can't delegate responsibility. And it sounds to me like now you've gotten into the science of all that.
Yes, yes.
Okay,
so those are the two main things that I like to teach or explain or share with organizations is bringing in that leadership culture from the bottom up. And giving them the broad guidelines, expectations, and boundaries that I had learned in the Marine Corps, sharing that with them. This is how it worked for me. This is how it can work for you, and sharing that with them and helping them to craft that, because everybody's going to be different. I mean, my 10 leadership philosophies are going to be different than someone else's, depending upon their mission, depending upon what they do, depending upon their vision, depending upon their culture. There's going to be, so it has to be very dialed in and tailored to that organization. You don't just, you know, pull it out of a book and expect that'll work.
That makes a lot of sense, because in my consulting experience, you could have a process or a checklist, but then you had to allow the client to customize it or tailor make it to fit their specific needs. So that makes a lot of sense.
Yes.
Let me change the subject a little bit. I watched a video that YouTube, and I was really taken by it, because the first thing that happened in the video was, Valerie, why would you like to jump out of a perfectly good aircraft? So I don't want to give away your age, but this was like a birthday milestone for you. So tell us about that.
Yeah, so for my 50th birthday, I jumped out of an airplane for the first time in my life. You know, I wanted to do it. I just wanted to do it. I can't really explain why. And so I needed an occasion to make me do it. And so turning 50, I think, is a big milestone for a lot of people. And I thought, well, that'll be a good event to force me to do it, put aside my, you know, things and do something for me. Yeah, so yeah, I jumped out of an airplane for the first time, and it was a tandem jump. And something I learned from that is I put 100% of my trust in the tandem jump instructor. And he was a guy from Brazil. He had been doing this for like 20 years. He's had thousands and thousands of jumps. He's very experienced. And I said, I'm just going to do exactly what he said. And it was just like the Marine Corps, when they say, do this or whatever, do it. You focus on doing that, and actually you stop being scared. And so that's what I did with this gentleman, is I just did exactly what he said. I didn't focus on anything else. And then I was scared, but I went anyway. You know? Well,
you took the very intelligent approach to it, and I admire you for it. In fact, you have my utmost admiration and respect for everything you've done, your Marine Corps career. Jumping out of the plane, it goes right back to when you first went to San Diego. You wanted to become a warrior, and you are a warrior. So that's just outstanding from my point of view. So you're in Arizona, and you have a golden retriever, and gosh, you know, all of us in our family, we're all dog lovers. So really, that's a wonderful thing too.
Yep, I've had Tyler for, he's got a funny story. So he was bred to be a hunting dog, but he wouldn't hunt. He wanted to be a pet. And so he was returned twice by two different people who were trying to train him to hunt, and he wasn't hunting. So he was returned to the breeder, and the breeder gave him to me because normally it costs money, but because he couldn't sell the dog, he gave him to me, and that was his mission in life, was to be a pet. So Tyler, the golden retriever, has been a marvelous pet for over 14 years, almost 15 years now.
Now, see, that's an outstanding, that's a great story, because we all have our mission in life, and we all can't be the same, and but we can still all bring joy and comfort to our fellow man.
That's right.
Okay, what have we not talked about that you would like to talk about?
I think I might like to talk about what I stand for, and what I have come to realize after reflecting on this with the Marine Corps, what the Marine Corps stands for. And I also was certified with the John Maxwell team with their leadership program. And so John Maxwell has his first law, he has the 21 irrefutable laws of leadership. And his first law is that your leadership potential is the lid on your potential as a person and as a person as an organization, the lid theory. And somehow it just kind of came to me one day that the Marine Corps and the reason why I vibe so much with them, we're about three things. We are about love, we are about integrity, and we're about discipline. And the love part, I know, kind of makes some people uncomfortable because, you know, but really it's about camaraderie, it's about commitment, it's about, you know, putting your others before yourself, it's about teamwork, love for your country, love for the Marine Corps, that is esprit de corps. So, so that's what love is about. That's what it means. And then integrity, the I, is doing the right thing when no one is looking, and making those difficult, unpopular decisions because it is the right thing to do. And then the third is discipline. And I don't mean punishment. I mean having, you know, control of yourself, having the right habits, you know, doing the right little things like cleaning your weapon or making your bed. Okay, well, when you're no longer in the Marine Corps, it's still making your bed, and it's still cleaning things up, and it's still being tidy, it's still nourishing your mind, heart, and spirit, and doing all those little things that you need to do every day. And so, so I'd like to say that that's what brings out the heroes in the Marine Corps, is that lid philosophy. And the reason why we have such great leadership in the Marine Corps is because of the lid being so high. We're very intense about love, integrity, and discipline, more than any other service, in my opinion. I know I'm biased, but we're more intense about love, integrity, and discipline than any other service, and that's why our leadership is where it is. It's why we bring out the heroes as well as we do in individuals and organizations, and I share that with people and with organizations in the private sector. You know, say you follow these values, these three values, and you are unapologetically intense about those three values: love, integrity, and discipline. And I think you'll be surprised at what happens, what the outcomes are. Okay,
that's great. Tell us about Polish Your Star, how people can get it. And for me, I had my books on Amazon, and the ebook is still there. But everybody said, when we buy the book on Amazon, you don't sign it, and we want you to sign the book. You know, so I presume that you have some copies that you can sign for people.
Absolutely. So they can reach me at Valerie at teemingwithtalent.llc.com. So they can email me there, or they can reach out to me on Facebook, LinkedIn, let me know, and I will send them a signed copy.
Okay, and we'll have all those links available in the article that accompanies this video. So Valerie, thank you so much. You've been such a great guest, and you're so delightful and refreshing. I'm just so happy that you were able to join me on the American Vision.
Thank you, Bill. I appreciate having you. It was a joy and a pleasure to be with you today.
Oh, thank you so much. Okay, boys and girls, I'm back, and I hope that you'll go ahead and order a copy of Polish Your Star, the 3-minute daily lessons of or to become an extraordinary leader. And I think, as you could see from the video in my interview with Valerie Berube, that she is certainly an extraordinary and exceptional leader. And while you're at it and you're thinking about getting some books, I got another book that you might want to look at, and that's 2020, A Clear Vision for America. And I just want to let you know that, you know, I'm on Facebook, so you can like me on Facebook. You can follow me on Twitter, and you can link up with me on LinkedIn. You can go to my webpage, 2020, americabook.com, when you can get that off my any place, but it's www.2020americabook.com. And there's so many Marines and so many vets, Air Force, Army, Navy, everybody is getting this book, and I get nothing but great reviews on it. People say, thank you so much, because I know you're very skeptical about the book, because you think, what could this guy tell me, you know, or what could you know? Well, what do I know? Who knows? But a lot of people, you know, really, when they read the book, they think, oh, okay, now I understand it all, because what you're doing is getting a lot of fake news, and this is the real news. So anyway, God bless you all for viewing. Be sure that you get linked up with Valerie, and God bless America. God bless our vets and our active duty personnel. God bless our Corps. And God save our America, because we need you now more than ever before.